Welcome to this podcast of the Florida Historical Quarterly. My name is Daniel Murphree and I am Assistant Editor of the Journal. If you are new to these podcasts, please visit the Florida Historical Quarterly on Facebook, where you can now access abstracts of each article in the current issue of the Journal. Today's podcast features an interview with Dr. Claire Strom, Rapetti-Trunzo Professor of History at Rollins College. In the interview, Dr. Strom and I discuss her article titled Controlling Venereal Disease in Orlando During World War II, which was published in the summer 2012 issue of the Florida Historical Quarterly. I want to thank you for joining us today. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
I'm Claire Strom, a professor of history at Rollins College in Florida.
Why did you choose to investigate the topic of venereal disease in Orlando during World War II?
Well, it came as kind of a surprise topic. I was teaching a class on the history of American sexuality, and I wanted my class to experience some research. So we went down to the Orange County Courthouse and discovered that they had the sheriff dockets for about 1920 through 1970. So everyone who was arrested in Orange County was entered into these dockets and why they were arrested. So I sat my students down and I had them going through the dockets looking for sexually based crimes that we could then write about for this class. And they all of a sudden said to me, why are all these people being arrested and the charge is for Dr. Kolak? Well, I didn't know the answer, but that's where the project started, because I started to wonder, well, what are these people doing being arrested for Dr. Kolak? And I noticed that they were clustered around World War II. So I did a bit more investigation and found out that Dr. Kolak was the venereal control officer for Orange County, liaising with the military at the Orlando Air Base. And it was illegal at that time to have a venereal disease, and especially if you were then going to sleep with someone. So what they were doing to try and protect airmen from venereal disease was somewhat randomly arresting young women that they thought might have a venereal disease and locking them up for Dr. Kolak, who would then test them to see if indeed they did have syphilis. So that I really stumbled into the project. It was really thanks to my students and my class.
How does the situation you're describing compare to other cities in Florida?
Well, it's kind of interesting because actually Orlando was a very small town in terms of the military in Florida during World War II. And actually you have a much larger military presence in Jacksonville and in Miami and Tampa and even in Pensacola. So while I think that the profile of the story is the same in these other cities, I think you would find many more women being arrested. You have curfews in Jacksonville, for example, where anyone over the age of 16, any female over the age of 16 isn't allowed out after a certain time because she might run into a soldier. They had rapid treatment centers in Jacksonville. In fact, they had one on a ship that was anchored in the bay to stop the girls being treated from escaping. So I think that the story is mirrored elsewhere, and it's probably a lot worse elsewhere, but I haven't had a chance to get in and look at the dockets or even know if they exist for these other big cities.
In terms of community viewpoints on venereal disease and prostitution, how did Orlando compare with other cities in Florida or the South or the U.S. as a whole?
Well, I think that the attitudes towards venereal disease changed during the war, basically out of necessity. So my research has shown that Florida as a whole had a fairly lax attitude towards prostitution. Before the war. In fact, prostitution was legal in Florida until 1944. So during most of this story, prostitution is legal. So, and I think it was somewhat of a tourist draw. There certainly was an area in Pensacola that was kind of a red light district that sailors and others liked to go to have some fun in the evening. As far as venereal disease went, generally speaking, especially in the South, it was seen as an African-American disease, and it was seen by whites as further proof of African-Americans' inferiority, that they were susceptible to diseases like syphilis and, of course, other diseases integral to the South like pellagra.
Well, you kind of touched on it, but based on your research, what conclusions can be reached regarding the role of venereal disease on race relations or even gender relations?
Well, it's kind of interesting because in all of the people that were arrested, I think there were 438 people arrested in Orlando during the war on suspicion of having a venereal disease. Of those 438, 22, 23, somewhere around that, were men. So clearly, no one was really concerned about men having venereal disease infecting women. What they were concerned about was the vulnerability of their armed forces to infection by women. So women were seen as the carriers. Men were never really considered carriers. So it's a very gendered story in that respect. And it's also a very racial story because African Americans had a much higher rate of venereal disease than whites. It was about 5 times higher in the black population than it was in the white population. So just, if nothing else, by necessity, that makes it a very racialized story. But I think you also find the police targeting young black girls who may come from poorer backgrounds and maybe just, were looking for some fun. I mean, you have to remember that these young women, by and large, came of age in the Depression. They were blacks in the American South. Life hadn't been very fun. And now all of a sudden there were these handsome guys in uniform wanting to take them out and take them dancing and take them to dinner. And, from their perspective, this wasn't a public health issue. From their perspective, this was a chance for some fun in a life that had not had much.
Okay. In a kind of a broader sense, how do studies of public health attitudes and programs better inform us about Florida's overall history or history in general?
When you look at the history of public health, whether it be venereal disease, sanitation, or my last book, which was on veterinary public health, I think what you end up wrestling with is two different ideals that have been held dear in American society and politics. On the one side, you have the belief that people need to be kept safe, that it's, to a certain extent, the government's job, whether it be the state government, the town government, the federal government, it's the government's job to make the country safe for its citizens and to look after the well-being of its people. On the other hand, in issues of public health, this conflicts very often with civil rights, whether it's the right of property, whether it's the right of person. The young women who were held in this story were held without habeas corpus. They never went to trial. If they indeed had syphilis, without any appeal, they would then be incarcerated in a rapid treatment center for up to a year. So, complete violation of civil liberties. So public health really explores that intersection of those two things that I think Americans have always been interested in.
Well, how does the story play out in the rest of the United States based on what you've researched?
Well, this is, I think, very interesting, and I didn't know this when I started the story, but while there were problems with prostitution and venereal disease throughout the country, and it was an issue for the military throughout the country, in Florida you have an interesting confluence, because Florida at this time, 1938, 1939, had the highest rates of venereal disease in the nation. And then you put somewhere around 142 military establishments in Florida, bringing over 1 million people into the state. So it's this place where you already have a very high rate of disease, and then you bring in a lot of young, sexually active servicemen who are leaving their families and homes and coming to the warm climes of Florida and presumably wanting some entertainment. So I think that this was a place that saw a huge problem in this regard and was the place where where the military and the civilian government worked out how to deal with it. And a lot of the things that were decided on in Florida were later implemented in places like Alabama and North Carolina.
To follow up with that, and again, this is kind of a speculative question. How do you think attitudes during the period you're talking about towards venereal disease compare to today?
Oh, well, that's interesting. One of the things that the state government did, in January 1944, the Florida state government declared January Venereal Disease Month. And they went on this huge campaign to eradicate the disease. They put billboards up. They put little messages in with your electricity bills telling you to get tested for venereal disease. They blanketed the state from bombers, dropping leaflets all over the rural areas of the state saying that you should get tested for venereal disease. They had radio plays. They had adverts in the paper. And in none of these was the concept of abstinence raised. I mean, this was strictly medical. You need to get tested for venereal disease. Now, it's very much aimed at the women. You, the women, need to get tested for venereal disease to protect our boys. But at no point are they saying, don't have sex. At no point are they saying, only have sex with your husband. I think it was in some ways less morally laden than it would be if it was happening today.
Thank you for speaking with us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for joining our international audience for this podcast of the Florida Historical Quarterly. The Florida Historical Quarterly is the peer-reviewed, scholarly journal of the Florida Historical Society. The Society was founded in 1856 and is the only statewide historical organization in the state of Florida. The Society is headquartered in Cocoa, Florida, and the editorial offices of the journal are in the Department of History at the University of Central Florida. I hope you have enjoyed the Florida Historical Quarterly podcast and that you will consider supporting future scholarship on Florida history by becoming a member of the Florida Historical Society. In recognition of the upcoming quincentennial of Ponce de Leon's first visit to Florida in 1513, the FHQ will publish a series of 6 special issues, each devoted to examining Florida over the previous 5 centuries. Beginning in 2013, a special issue will be published each consecutive year, with 2 in 2016, that provides an overview of current interpretations and evaluation of historiographic trends relevant to the period being covered. We look forward to receiving your feedback on these special issues and other future FHQ volumes as well. We also invite researchers to access back issues of the Florida Historical Quarterly on JSTOR. Thank you again for listening to the Florida Historical Quarterly podcast. If you enjoy listening to this podcast and know of others who enjoy history, please tell them about the podcast and have them find us on Facebook.